Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us on the discussion on perfecting the handshake between humans and machines. While I set the context a couple of minutes earlier on the discussion, I'd now like to take the opportunity to introduce our panelists today. We have Mr. Srinivas Jain. He is the Executive Director and Head of Strategy at SBI Funds Management and comes with over 27 years of experience in banking and financial services industry. He is known for his investment management. Sorry, yeah. He's known for his investment management knowledge. Hello. Yeah. And is an active contributor to many events in personal finance, marketing, fintech, indexing, sales, and innovation. He is also associated with multiple industry committees. Thank you, Mr. Jain, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
We have Mr. Deepak Lingwal. He is the Chief Operating Officer at SBI General Insurance Limited. He has over 25 years of extensive work experience in banking and finance, IT, operations, treasury, corporate and SME loans, brand and marketing, etc. He started his career as a probationary officer at SBI in 1995 and has also been the CEO of SBI Mauritius from September 2014 to September 2018. Thank you, Mr. Lingwal, for joining us today.
Hi, thank you.
We have Mr. Balkrishna Singhania. He is the EVP and Chief Digital Officer at HDFC Life and has over 17 years of experience as an analytics and consulting leader. Before joining HDFC Life, he was associated with PwC Advisory as Managing Director and Head of Analytics Innovation. He has also worked with Citigroup, Fractal Analytics, Capital One Bank, and GE Technology Center. Thank you, Bala, for joining us today.
Thanks, Meenakshi.
We have Mr. Soni A. He is the Head of Digital Banking at South India Bank. In his current role, he leads a team of passionate young achievers with the main goal of owning the digital transformation of their organization. They partner with the fintech, startups, and established players to bring the best breed digital solutions based on emerging technologies such as blockchain, AI, ML, etc. to their customers. Thank Mr. Soni for joining in.
Pleasure.
We also have a couple of other participants who would be joining us in a couple of minutes, but I'll just go ahead with the introduction so you all know who else is joining us. We have Mr. Srinivas Iyengar, who is the CEO at Reliance Nippon Life Insurance. He has over 26 years of experience in operations, customer service, and technology. Mr. Iyengar is an expert in life insurance industry and technology consulting with a vast experience in managing large enterprise and insurance setup successfully and delivering superior performance. He is a technology evangelist focused on digital innovation-led industry leadership. We also have Mr. Shiv Kumar Bhasin, who is the Chief Operations and Technology Officer responsible for transforming the National Stock Exchange as a fair, equitable, and interoperable institution. Shiv comes with over 23 years of experience working across Fortune 500 financial services companies as a catalyst for their digital transformation, customer experience, design thinking, robotics, applications, infrastructure, re-engineering, and many more. We have with us from IBM, Mr. Shailendra Singh, Vice President, Financial Services Sector, GBS, IBM, India, South Asia. He has over 23 years of experience in helping organizations transform by adopting new technologies and optimizing the existing one. He brings global best practice and experience, having lived and worked in Australia, Europe, and South Africa for 18 years.
Hey, welcome, hi, Meenakshi. Hi, everybody.
Shell, we're just waiting for a couple of other participants, but we decided to go ahead and start. So I'm actually now straight away going to hand over to you to get your perspective on industry trends before we go ahead with the panel discussion. So over to you, Shailendra.
Perfect, thank you. First of all, my extreme apology, guys. I was just wrapping up previous meeting, but in this offline mode, your meetings tend to just overrun. So sorry about it. First of all. I think, we recently just completed a CEO study, which we do every year. And we did this during, the pandemic year. So we covered about 3,000 CEOs across 26 industry and 50, countries. some interesting nuggets which came out of it, and I just thought I would just share with you in maybe a couple of minutes in terms of what we are seeing. So I think in the whole pandemic part of it, while the initial focus was making sure people continue to work, they have an access to the system, employees, but a couple of broad themes which seem to be coming out very very clearly, and we are seeing that also within IBM. The cybersecurity part of it,
Shalin,
very
we lost.
managed from a cyber perspective. Can you hear me now?
Now we can. We lost you for a minute, Shell, but now we
Now
can.
Yeah,
there
I
was
think
lost.
it was something. Sorry, Deepak, something was network was dropping. So one was this whole cyber security and the resilience part of it, because with the amount of volume of the traffic which has moved to the digital mode, the resilience of the systems are getting tested. So that was one area which globally the CEOs were calling out, including in the financial services sector. The other thing which they were saying is that employees, how do I go ahead and engage with my employees who are going to be anywhere? So the way COVID is and the multiple waves of COVID are coming up, nobody seemed to be certain in terms of what's going to be the ways of working, going forward, maybe a couple of years down the line. So everybody is talking about it's going to be a situation where people will at least partially work from home. So how do you make sure that you continue to ensure productivity and you continue to engage with the employee from any location which they work? What we are also seeing is that there are a lot of organization, and I would say the forward looking ones, are using this disruption to see, can I take technology and an advantage and start leapfrogging. So technology as a data, where a lot of people, if you look at catch up, go to manage things, saying, okay, let me also launch because competition has done it. There are people who are talking about how do I use technology to differentiate myself and leapfrog the competition in that front. So that was the third thing which we were very very clearly seeing. The last thing which we also saw coming up is that people are talking about is, so far my business model is a B2B model. How do I start understanding my consumer a little bit? So move towards a B2C, sort of a model is becoming more and more, paramount. And not only B2C, people are also talking about how do I go ahead and start participating in the other ecosystem. So if you look at the insurance industry, the banca used to be a big channel. People are talking about, can I go ahead and create alternative channels beyond banca and participate in the other ecosystem, which maybe people like Geo and all, which is trying to do in India. How do we participate in the ecosystem part of it? So I think those are the broad themes which we were came out of the CEOS study, which we did it, including in the financial services part of it. And even as an IBM, if you look at locally the conversations which uh, we are having a conversation where people are looking at their entire technology and operations in terms of what could we do from a technology and operations perspective to make it more resilient, and where people should be able to, acquire customer and service customer with, very little or as little as possible a human intervention part of it. So that is one thing which we are, clearly seeing a lot of conversation in that regard is happening with regard to the back office and the middle office part of it. There's a lot of digitization, a lot of investments which was done on the front end part of it, but the back end, I think we have all done point solution, point interventions. Now people are talking about how do I make it seamless so that the transactions are able to go through immediately. And we are doing some work as we speak with a couple of customers in India, where we are really looking at their end-to-end transformation of front office, back office, and middle office, so that the customer experience, both from acquisition and servicing perspective, become homogeneous. So that's one trend which we are definitely seeing, and today we'll be talking about the back office and middle office with more impetus. What we are also seeing in Indian market right now is cloud was always there, but I think it was an enigma. People used to always say, "Oh, what should I do with the cloud? Sound interesting. My board is asking for me." I think more and more we are saying that in spite of AWS and Google and Azure being there, people are coming to us and asking in terms of what should be my cloud strategy, because the reality is I have invested in my own kit. I have my own data center. I can't move everything in a cloud because RBI and the other regulators will also not allow it. And at the same time, I also want to take advantage. So how do you live in this hybrid world? And that's where this whole hybrid cloud approach in terms of help me decipher cloud and help me decipher the cloud, adoption part of it is becoming, the critical. So if I could broadly tell you, those are the, two broad themes which is coming out. And the other third area, which I'm sure all of you also are grappling with, we keep talking about as an IBM, a garage way of working, agile way of working. We are getting a lot of questions off late coming by saying, how do I make sure that my projects also, you know, are from a concept to execution stage, we are able to do it in about 3 months time frame? How do I bring agility in my entire delivery? Because there are a lot of organizations who still grapple with a problem where it takes 6 months to 9 months to deliver a program. So those are the couple of themes which was there in our industry. I thought I'll share that with you, and we will talk about it in next about 45 minutes or so which we have. But before we open for the discussion, I think I would really thank all of you for taking time out and agreeing for this discussion. Meenakshi, on to you, please.
Thank you, Shailendra. Um, So, we'll straightway get into the panel discussion. The way I thought I'd take it forward was have, a designated question for each and every one of you. And then round two, seeing how we have time, we'll kind of lay the questions open and get everybody's insights, etc., onto it. While I'll put Shell on the hot spot with a special second question for him as well. But that's how I thought we'll actually go ahead with it. So for the first question, I'll actually go ahead to Mr. Srinivas Jain. I wanted to ask you your perspective about the middle office and back office. Can you talk to us about some of the key projects you've undertaken in the past year, and what is the your organization's attitude towards these investments? Also, how are you currently measuring the success of these projects?
Well, it's kind of a loaded multiple questions there. So let me try and get one at a time. So what's been our experience with our middle office, back office? I think the middle office, back office is the least disturbed project in our organization, simply because at this point of time, unlike a bank or an insurance company, there is really no high quality application that's there, at least in Indian scale. There have been a couple of them globally. But the solution on the back end, middle office, and the back office is very limited in India. There is only one solution, a Bangalore-based company, which runs it. Again, it's fairly exhaustive and not very agile. So that's been our biggest challenge from the asset management industry point of view. So we've been trying to, so we did our own hand of developing one and gave up very soon because we are not an investment, we are actually not an IT company. So we decided to obviously look for best-in-class solution out there. One of the things that we've done in the last few years is to see how do we remove dependency with the vendor in trying to build our own processes. And we've just launched a new project called Project Neve, which is basically building automation internally, trying to build. So if you look at the mutual fund space per se, our customer servicing challenges is outsourced. We have a registrar which takes care of all the so-called customer servicing back offices. Our biggest challenge is our settlement, managing of custody, and managing of investments, right? So that's the big challenge, and there is a very little innovation that's happened in that space for a fairly long period of time. So there are very clear solutions available. So we work with those standard solutions which are there, but we've added our own color to it in terms of automations and servicing on top of it. But this is the first year where we have again come back and said, can we do something at a global scale here? Work with a couple of other asset managers or maybe a global. So we have a joint venture with our own joint venture partner called Amundi. They have globally actually developed an application on their own. When I say application, it's a middle office setup. We're trying to see if we can get that solution to India, or at least customize that solution to India, or redevelop the whole solution to India. But that is definitely a big headache that today we're looking at, because most of our solutions are really dated when it comes to middle office. I think there was a couple of other questions in your first question, which was, again, because there were 3 questions, I missed the flow. Can you just come back on the other 2 points, please?
Yeah. What is your organization's attitude towards these investments, and also how are you measuring the success of the projects you may have undertaken?
Yeah, so the attitude is, I would say, loosely used, we are scared. that these investments could, if not done or if no solutions done on time, could get us into trouble. So obviously we are very aware and looking at it as a priority. So that's, I don't know if that's the word called attitude, but that's what we do. And how do you measure success here? I think ultimately back office and back office systems, the middle and back office systems are largely about efficiency. It's largely about cost saving. And we have built models internally, but I guess today there is really no good metrics out there. Eventually, when we have a good solution, we will also have metrics to measure that. At this point of time, I think just making sure the use case and business as usual is taken care itself is a big thing. One of the things that most of the companies do suffer and we suffer is there's a whole lot of regulatory changes that happens virtually every month. And the entire middle office system is not really geared to do so much of changes. And it's pretty complex. So for us, just about trying to get this feature list ready, going live on the regulatory timelines are today critical. But eventually, I think we'll build better efficiency parameters for us to judge and test whether this makes sense. I really don't know if I've answered that question because I'm the only asset manager here in the industry, in this panel at least. So I hope that helps.
No, that definitely helps. I'm just going to ask another leading question. There are only two really large digital RTAs in the industry, and then, of course, a few fintechs. What do you really see as the role ahead now? I mean, it's just got the dependencies there, which I think you also alluded to. What do you see the role ahead
the
for these?
Customer part of it is, Meenakshi, the customer part of it is a completely different ballgame, right? So there are two large solutions that we grapple with. What is the internal solutions, which are your middle, front, and back office solution? The entire customer-facing solution is a completely different solution problem because there, as you said, we have two large players who kind of they decide the innovation levels, they decide what output would come. So over the last few years, we have kind of taken away some of those responsibility, at least the front-end responsibility of customer servicing, front-end responsibility, onboarding, and all those experiences are now away from our servicing agents like CAMS and Carvi. All of that because digital is now front ends, for all asset management company we've been able to do, not just us, all of them. So technically in the COVID period, we were doing almost 100% all our transaction in digital. So all of them were going on our assets or platforms that we've created. But there is still a challenge in terms of they upping their capabilities. And because it's a regulated environment and not many players out there, that's a little bit of a challenge. We've contemplated looking at alternative solutions. But at this point of time, there is really no alternative to these two players out there.
Right. Thank you so much for that. With that, I'm actually going to move over to Mr. Soni. So, Mr. Soni, given the new ask from business, can you give us a sense of how technology architecture is changing to keep pace? More specifically, can you give us a sense of how this change is impacting your investments in technology as well?
Well, thank you, Meenakshi. I mean, the first part, as a banker in India today, we are going through a huge transformation in terms of not just the multi-faceted payment options that are there in the country, thanks to all the initiatives that has been taken by the RBI, NPCI, and all the banks. But the business models are also changing dramatically. So, with the game changer of UPI that came in a few years back, today you're looking at a scenario where a huge percentage of your transactions are actually being done by a non-banking entity on a non-banking asset, and which is highly volatile. So in the sense, today you could have a Google or a Amazon come up and run a campaign for a day or two, and then whatever estimates that you have done on your architecture for the last 2-3 years, looking at whatever peaks and averages that you've had, that goes for a toss, because at the end of the day, you could be experiencing significant amount of traction in one particular site or two sites or two portals, and the backend processing has to happen through a banking channel. So there are interesting discussions that are happening in our space where we are looking at how do you take care of this, while you can keep on investing at the back end in terms of hybrid options, some amount of cloud within the RBI guidelines, etc. But most of the transaction processing, to be very honest, has been on an on-prem environment, and that while it gives a lot of sense of comfort on security side, on the scalability, etc., there could possibly be a lot of challenges that we are, that we have to constantly be aware of. So the other interesting thing that is happening in our space is the type of transactions that are coming in. So typically, some of these volumes are built by very low ticket transactions, and it doesn't make sense to invest in an architecture which actually, should be catering to these small ticket transactions. So from an ecosystem perspective, there are plays around, can we have something which is built as a wrapper around the core system, so that the core systems are really not affected by the huge scale and volume that comes in. So one interesting trend that you could possibly see is from the online transaction space that banks today have, be it UPI, IMPS, NEFT, you name it. I mean, it's humongous. And then, of course, RBI has now permitted new umbrella entities, which is going to be alternate players in addition to NPCI. So you're going to see a plethora of options that are coming up, and each one is going to innovate in its own way. But one thought process that all of us think might happen in the near future is the increase in sort of semi-offline payments. The small ticket transactions, etc., could possibly move from an online scenario to an offline scenario, after balancing the risks associated with it. But at the same time, it offers the convenience, because in India you have so many different Indias at the same time. So obviously you have to be prepared for all of that, the different type of customers, the literacy levels, everything has to be managed. So we are looking at a scenario where on the one side, you would be still investing a lot on the online transaction space. There could be innovative options that will come on the offline space. One of them, the project that most of you would be aware about, is that there's a mobility card that has been introduced, wherein the transit options, all the transport transit options would be integrated in the mobility space, which can then be extended to some of the other small ticket transactions also. So the ask from various stakeholders is to be prepared for most of them, have investments ready, build, so that we are not found asking. We take pride in the fact that we were the first bank in the country to go live on UPI, but at the same time, we should be very honest in admitting that from a market share, it's all been taken away by non-banking players. So that has to be that's the story going forward. I'm sure that we have to be prepared to build infra, have architectures which will support interoperability, and the other last concluding point on that is that the whole regulator thought is very clear. While UPI is the payment open, interoperable system that came about, today RBI has come up with account aggregator, where the non-financial data will also have to be opened up. So open banking is round the corner, and therefore the banks have to be prepared to act as more of back office and purely as back office functions for the activities that will be done by non-banking entities. So that's where we are all headed.
Sure. No, thank you. That's definitely been very helpful and insightful. With that, I'll just take a second to welcome Mr. Shiv Kumar Bhasin for joining us. Welcome, sir. Thank you for joining in. We've already started with the roundtable, so we'll just continue. I'm actually now going to be asking the other questions, and then I'll come across to you. Thank you for joining in. The next question, actually, the next two questions are on insurance. So, I'll first refer to Mr. Deepak Lingwal and then to Bala. So just setting the context, Mr. Lingwal, customer awareness as a trend is impacting insurance industry. At one end, we see increased digital awareness and adoption has raised the bar for self-service and near real-time claim experience. It has also created an opportunity to tap into new customers, as awareness about insurance is at an all-time high given COVID. In that scenario, do you believe that insurers have been able to capitalize on the digital opportunity by way of increased revenue or operations efficiencies?
Well, Meenakshi, I think let me start my this answer to your question with paying my heartfelt condolences to all the people who have lost their lives due to COVID. And I think it's merely wastage of human resources. And more than 25 million people have been impacted because of COVID. So things have changed drastically, and as you rightly pointed out, that this is the time where digital is no more an option or a choice, but it is a necessity. And if I put this pandemic period into three phases, so I would like to tell you that this I call RRT. I mean, the first phase was when we all insurance companies have responded to to the pandemic and its effect on the business. And I think insurance is a relationship-based industry where overnight we have been asked to move to the remote working and connecting with the customer through virtual mode. So, frankly speaking, most of the companies, I mean, insurance companies were already on the journey of digitization of most of its processes. But certainly, this pandemic has posed challenges, serious challenges when it comes to the underwriting challenges, when it comes to the distribution channels, because you can digitize your company, but you have to digitize your distribution partner also. So this is the one area where we need to focus. So some of the projects were preponed, and we were already, I mean, most of the insurance companies were already using the platform which were available to us, like Policy Bazaar and others, and tie up with other digital platform. The only thing is which we have noticed as of now is that customer is very well informed, and the kind of questions they ask, it's very difficult to answer. So you can view this as an opportunity as well as a challenge. So when we talk about the digitization, we use this to our advantage because we have started using many channels like chatbot, uh, AI services, also RPAs. Most of our process we go for automation. So that is the opportunity which we encashed. But yes, selling our product on digital platform is always a financially viable proposition for all the channels, insurance company. So that we did in a way. And during this process, we could automate most of our processes like renewal or underwriting or the health claim processing, etc. So in a way, we think that pandemic has given us an opportunity to digitize more and put our resources to optimum utilization with less cost.
Sure.
That's it. That's all from my side, Meenakshi.
And how do you? Sure. I was going to say, what do you see the road ahead now? You've already done the initial phase. What do you see in future for the insurance industry at this point? Any perspective on that?
Yeah, Meenakshi, I think this pandemic will remain there for a longer period for sure, because the way we are encountering the problems, especially in Indian context. So going forward, yes, the challenge would be, as Shailendra was discussing about the use of, cloud-based services, because the time will come when we'll exhaust our internal storage capacity, and then we need to look for the solution. And another thing is more and more tie-up we have to do with the fintech company, insurtech company, to ensure that more digitized, more customized products are on offer, and we use the bandwidth in a more optimal manner. So because these challenges are going to be there, so pandemic has just given us an opportunity, but going forward, yes, digitization is the only solution.
Sure, thank you. I'll just take the opportunity to welcome Mr. Iyengar. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for joining in. We've already started with the roundtable. With that,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon. Yeah, as I mentioned, we've already started with the roundtable. So we will come to you in a bit. I'm just going to go ahead with the next question for Bala. So Bala, over to you. Wanted to check with you, what have been the key factors that have allowed your organization to scale new heights in these challenging times? In the past, insurance has been more in the brick and mortar space, but what all have you done differently during the pandemic? What are the lessons learned?
Sure. I would like to say that HDFC Life Insurance, for sure, had been a very technology-focused company even before the pandemic, and that was one thing that really helped us. So we saw a lot of jokes floating that COVID has been the biggest digital transformation agent for a lot of companies. I would think that it doesn't apply to us because we were doing a lot of it beforehand, and not because pandemic forced us to do it in a particular way, but because we see technology as way to grow, which means if I want to grow my business twice, it doesn't mean I have my operations, my technology, my everything else becoming twice in size. So technology is the way to go in that sense. So a lot of our capabilities, yes, were refined for COVID times. For example, we always had a face detection technology for life certificate, etc., for annuity customers. Now we could use some of those technologies for other places when we were starting to do, let's say, a video MER and want to confirm the validity of a person coming on the video for the purpose of doing the video MER. Now, the point here is that the base capability on facial detection was already there with me, which means I only have to build an application on top of that. And that is the kind of attitude I think helps an organization to keep pushing itself forward. Even today, we invest a certain percentage of our time on research kind of an application, which means that they may not see the light of the customer full scale rollout in, say, next 2 years, but we continue to do that. For example, we are experimenting with voice related things. We already have skills on Google and Alexa rolled out. They are very, very small. We don't expect ROI now, but we believe that as we keep doing these investments in technology, next 3 years, 5 years, not all of them, but many of them will um, continue to give us the competitive advantage the way it has been for us. We were among the first one to become predominantly, I would not say 100%, but predominantly a cloud company. So again, that was a decision taken before pandemic, and it was not pandemic that drove us to that decision. Um, so net, these are the kind of things that our management, our leadership has been doing. We look at infrastructure, etc., and say, you know what, as the cost of other things, including average cost of staff, etc., continue to rise, if I don't become more efficient in what I do, my operations cost will continue to increase as a percentage of the business that I do. And therefore, technology becomes more useful in not only cost perspective, but also as consumer, we expect more and more technology. We expect more and more self-service. So, like after we launched the full customer service on WhatsApp, a decently high percentage of our customer service request now comes on that channel, and we are able to address most of them there itself through bots. Now, that's what customer expects. Customer doesn't expect a 9 to 5 p.m. customer service call anymore. They can send me a chat request at 11 o'clock in the night, and they don't expect it to hear back next day 9 a.m. More often than not, they expect it to hear right then. And that's the kind of mindset the organizations must have to say, what does my customer want? How do I provide them that kind of capabilities and move ahead with those? And to me, that's how HDFC Life has been looking at technology as business enabler, business differentiator, and to some extent even need to survive also in some sense. We, in global markets, we have seen companies not doing very well after a certain point in time. Companies like Kotak, the camera company, is a simple example, textbook example, of course, but they died because of lack of technology in some sense and lack of innovation, and in spite of the fact that they were the inventor of digital cameras. So that's what we are doing, and I can give you specifics, but the point is, as long as you are investing in the right things, keep innovating and not just following the market, you will land in a good space. Does that answer your question?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, it does. I think you reiterated what what we all have been seeing. There's definitely a need for that constant investment in technology to remain relevant in today's world. So no, thank you for that. With that, we'll move over to Mr. Shiv Kumar Bhasin. Mr. Bhasin, for you really has been, the question that I really want to ask you, one of the constant struggles for any organization when assessing technology and vendors is to find cost between cost and agility. Are these your concerns as well? Are there any other areas that you consider as important when you're looking at a new vendor?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. See, cost and agility is, these are the two factors for any, IT operations to run successfully. That cost management is one of the key aspects, and the agility is the key because given the one of the last 2 years of pandemic scenarios, as well as we are discovering everything new in all this period, whether it is to uh, do the development, or whether it is to means IT development, or it is to do with the business operations or the customer service aspects. So in all the scenarios, new things, new areas have been discovered, where the what people found that using the digitization, the agility has grown. Whatever used to happen face to face, now while carrying out the same processes using digital way, there is a time and cost saves are also there. uh, but at the same time, there are other drawbacks which we are not discussing here, in terms of the well-being of the employees, or the work-life balance. Uh, but definitely, in terms of the new scenarios and how to solution them, which probably would have taken us many years. So those we could address in a short amount of time. A lot of various kinds of norms or notions which were built in the organization, that this cannot work in such kind of environments or in our kind of environments, those are broken, and people have crossed the river, and they have gone to the lot of digitization of the various processes. So when it comes to, definitely we are very cost sensitive organization. One, we are being a private sector, and second is we are not uh, more like a when you look at the exchange, it is a more the fee and commission business. So, and given that, however, I think by the God's grace or whatever, I think I should say, it's not a we see a lot of industries getting impacted adversely, a lot of people getting impacted adversely. The capital market volumes have been growing, so that way we are not impacted by the pandemic, because the being a platform business, the transactions are coming because of the volatility in the market or changes in the market. Uh, and that has actually helped us as well, or put us on toes to be agile for scalability of the platforms and robustness of the platforms as well. Constantly building that all along. Like when we started in the pandemic last year in March, we were around 2 billion orders per day we were processing. And now, after 18 months or so in the pandemic, we are processing 6.5 billion orders in a day. So it is more than three times, the growth has happened. And it was very aggressive growth. So consequently, all the trading platforms, the downstream post trade platforms, everything have to be made much more scalable, and operations as well became very challenging as well. So the cost consciousness have been there in terms of having the programs going on time, and the right quality of infrastructure getting deployed to handle the scalability. The agility was that markets are unpredictable, so you need to have sufficient headroom. So definitely these two have been very, very key for us all along in this pandemic time. It has become more, than the normal days, to focus on the cost and agility.
Sure, Mr. Vaseem. I know it's really been something that we all have seen, the kind of volumes. I think everybody who wasn't an investor has also become an investor in the past 1 year, adding to the volume that we see. So the robustness of your platform is really, really important at this point.
Yes.
So with that, we'll move to Mr. Iyengar. Mr. Iyengar, one of the questions that we had for you today was, can you give us a sense of the customer experience conversations your key stakeholders are having with you? What has changed in the past 1 year, and are there any new, expectations and tasks that you've been given for 2021 and beyond? Sorry, you're on mute, Mr. Iyengar. I think you're still on mute.
You're able to hear me? You're able to hear me?
Yeah, we're able to hear you now. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. What I was trying to say is the core part of the customer expectations or the customer uh, behavioral aspect hasn't changed much. And I know I'm making a differential statement here by saying that what has not changed is the expectation of this from the organization. Now, for example, if it is an insurance organization, he is looking for a seamless service if he's a new customer and the entire seamless service of onboarding. If he's an existing customer, how can he get his requirements in terms of service or any information as easy as possible? It is also many a times a misnomer that he expects everything at a flick of a button. Not necessarily so. In this industry, especially in the financial services industry, what is most important is correct information, being able to address his query, and ensure that his transaction confirmation is given. I will give you one small example. If a person has paid a renewal premium, he would expect a communication from you immediately or within a very short time saying that you have received the money and his life insurance is covered for the next 1 year. For him, that's extremely important than anything else. Having said that, what is 1 year has changed or made change to both the sides is, number one, he expects the same thing without you being next to him. In other words, how can you provide him a service without him having to come to your office or without him having to call up your call center and wait for a long period of time to be able to? While we may fancy all options like an auto IVR and so on, the customer typically looks like, for certain transactions, can I speak to your person? I would like to get a clarification and then go forward. Can you provide this from maintaining the social distance, not necessarily having to make him travel? That then becomes the core principle with which he tries to connect with you or which he expects from you. Now, you could apply this expectation onto various parameters. If he is going for a maturity of policy, is your systems and processes geared enough so that you can proactively connect with him to tell him what is due when, and if he has got to submit it, can he submit it in a very simple and easy manner without, of course, not having to visit your branch, not having to go through a page. Now, whether that would mean he submits a document through WhatsApp and you enable certain bots for him, that's a vehicle for getting it done. If you're going to have an voice to text conversion whereby he speaks certain answers for a policy reinstatement, and you convert the voice into text and then convert it into data, thereby able to say that capture the keywords and say, yes, you are healthy, you don't have other medical problems, that's what we could see from what you spoke to us, and your policy is reinstated. All this without having a human intervention. Or it could be if there is a death claim, in case of an unfortunate death claim. And today, that's a big challenge today, that what people are facing is one of the important side of this pandemic is also the number of deaths. How can I be able to proactively connect with his family? Now, we have always traditionally lived up to say that you contact me, you are will tell you what's the document for a settlement of a claim. Now, there are data available to be able to say, if you're hope all is well, should there be a problem, just give us a missed call and we will connect it back. Because it's not a right norm to say that,
Mr. Iyengar,
we heard
we are
that you are
losing you. I think there's a little bit of disturbance.
you can't have it. Is it clear now?
No, just
Am I
losing you a bit.
audible?
I think you're coming in and out, so we're losing you a bit.
Am I audible?
No, at the moment we can't hear you.
Okay. Am I audible
Yeah,
now?
actually much
I was switched
better.
off my
Yeah,
mute.
much better. Thank you.
So all I was just mentioning was we need to. The customer need is to say that, can you reach me before I having to discover various ways to reach you? All the more important at this time. Organizations which have been able to flip this around and try to do it will be the organizations who have been very successful. And there have been many organizations who have done that, not just in the insurance sector, but many organizations. I would say that is one big technological shift that is available today, and which has also enabled organizations to live up to the next level of expectation from the customer. It's like saying there are more webinars successfully done today than physical meetings of all the panel discussions, maybe when there was no COVID. The things have changed. Things have changed for the better. So it's these things that's expected by the customer.
Right. I think the customer, you're right, has definitely become a lot more demanding, and that is definitely very, very obvious at today's point. Given that this has happened and the customer has become a lot more demanding in the current times, anything different that you intend to do in the coming year from a technology perspective, etc., from an operations, any investments, etc., that you intend to make?
So there are make this entire onboarding even more easier. There have been, as Mr. Singhania mentioned, that many of the companies have not made their technology ready in anticipation of COVID. They made the technology ready to be able to service the customer better. And what we are thinking is, and anyway, this COVID situation is going to come back to normal. However, the needs are still going to only increase. So what we are looking for it is, how can we make this as a permanent process of ensuring far smoother onboarding, irrespective whether there is a forced social distancing or not. Then there's an empowerment in the hands of the seller to be able to take a choice to say that which option he wants. That's one area. The second area is all about to look at how can we use more of video and communication in the entire interaction with customer. One of the reasons pre-COVID was there were very little developments in this area as an industry as a whole. I'm talking about the whole tech industry in providing solution, or people were worried to use it. With this situation, people have used it. There are lots of new players. There's a great amount of development that's happened. What this has done is many of these authentication that you typically tell your customer to do, you would send a phone number, you'll send an SMS, he has to do an OTP, then you do some 2 more levels of authentication. That this one voice-based conversation finishes all of these requirements, and with coupled that with the facial recognition technology, as I speak to you, I know that you are the person who is actually supposed to be speaking to me. And that's the thing that a lot of investments, a lot of people are doing. And that's one area that I see. And therefore, a consequent impact of this is you need to store those videos. So what is the storage that you will look at? What is the, would you look at? Not everything is cloud. There is an on-prem cloud hybrid, different organization, different flavor. Again, within an organization also, the level with which you want to access this information multiple times will decide whether you want to put it on cloud or you want to have in-prem, which can be accessed faster or whichever way. So, and the third and the last one is to look at how can you connect more proactively with the customer without making him feel that you are being intrusive. A simple thing would be to probably send out an as an example, sending out an update saying that trust you're all safe, you're taken care of. Should you need any help in terms of any medical queries, we have a doctor who is available on a call for you as our esteemed customer. Just click a button here and in 30 seconds somebody will call you. Now when the doctor calls him, there are 2 things that happen. His query gets satisfied. Second and most important thing, as a company, you know that you have understood the latest status of the customer. The customer is contactable. Is there any contact number that has changed? You get it. The customer is hailed in RT. It's always a 2-way beneficial. So these 3 areas: onboarding, regular service, and when a person needs you and he doesn't have to search, and how can you reach him?
Sure. So I think, thanks, Mr. Anger, that has been helpful. And I think that kind of leads me very well into the question I was planning to ask Shailendra on, so question for you, Shel. Financial institutions have demonstrated remarkable agility in sustaining businesses during COVID-19. Can you exemplify what role can business and technology leaders like IBM play in helping businesses reinvent themselves and grow in a post-pandemic world?
Sure. Subhanakshi, thank you. And I think thanks to the rest of the panelists. I think a very different perspective, but very insightful. But when I was, just taking some notes in terms of what are the buzzwords which was coming up. So everybody was talking about, how can I onboard customer better? How could I service customer better? Was one big themes which was coming about because it's still evolving. We are all dealing with, the COVID part of it. The second thing which was talking about, I think Srinivas was talking about, this whole automation part of it, that while I still have large legacy system, and what he's saying is right, financial services industry, the biggest problem which you have is your core systems are very few choices when it comes to replacing them or doing anything about it. So how do you still live with your core system, but still bring the agility and on the automation part of it? And then we were also talking about understanding our various stakeholders, whether it is our end customer or a partner or an employee in this period. Because if you really want to be proactive, as Mr. Iyengar was saying, one of the first things which you have to do is understand me. understand me as a customer, understand me as an employee. So I think as an IBM organization, we are very clearly helping organization in 2 3 areas. Broadly, if I look at from an India context perspective. One is when we talk about automation, I heard a lot of things, RPA, AI, machine learning, so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is that whether it's in India or globally, all these tools are such that you buy the tools, it takes you 6 months to deploy it, and after that you hope that you're going to get some results out of it, right? Today, the ball game is shifting, where IBM sort of an organization are coming by saying, my dear customer, why do you need to invest in it? There are others, prototypes, other people who have done it, be it in your contact center side of it, or be it in your back office, middle office part of it. Go ahead and, there will be organization which will invest proactively for you, and you don't have to wait 6 months for to get the outcome or the business benefit. You start getting about, you know, 2 to 3 months time frame. So that's one shift in the way the whole automation, AI, machine learning is being looked at from a back office and a middle office perspective, where we as an organization are playing some very significant role of it. And the related point here is that if you look at any large organization, and I know, we talked about HDFC Life, they have done a credible job in capturing the market. But the question here is that most of the AI and ML, people have used different type of bots. Scalability of the bot and deployment at enterprise scale always becomes a problem, right? And that's another role where we are playing, where we are saying it need not be all blue. We are talking about best in class, but can we identify a set of tools, which can be used across organization as much as possible to achieve your automation objective, right? I know of organization in India who have deployed 250 bots. You go to, corporate side, they have one sort of a bot tools. You go to the retail side, different bot tools. So different segments over a period of time have created a mushroom of a bot, and none of them scale. So I think that is one area where we are very clearly playing a role on it. Second thing, data. I think more and more, the warehouse, collating the data, all that is great. I think where we are helping organization is that how do you create, intelligence out of your data? How do you use analytics? How do you use machine learnings, sort of a tools on your data, so that you are able to create products which is, tuned to individual customer, if not individual customer, at least to, a segment of a customer, and then be proactive. When you look at insurance, when you look at NBFC, I think the biggest challenge all of us, and even banking to an extent, the biggest challenge which all of us have, and we are customers of a one bank or a one insurance or a one asset management company, they understand, the understanding of the end customer is still very, very minimal. My banker, I'm a private banker for one of the largest, banks in the country. I can give you an assurance, last 2 years of my experience of having come to India, they do not understand me as a customer. They do not even have a good view of what are the portfolio of the products which I have with them. It's still mutual fund, insurance and all. The relationship manager tries to do it, but at the end of the day, it's still a secondary data on which he is, trying to play. So I think we are helping organization in trying to understand their customers, their employees, and a partner a little bit more, so that we can start creating, use cases which could be deployed for the business benefit. So that's a second area which we are, definitely playing in. And third area, if you could call it, is the digital also is taking a very big stake. When you talk about asset management, look at from a SBI perspective. Look at the amount of business which they get through SBI or other platforms which is there, right? Or the partners which is there. How much of the business is coming from a B2C perspective? Now, with the changes which RBI is talking about for the asset management industry, more and more the next gen will like to buy those products, or at least should have an ability to buy those products online, and should be able to complete the transaction online, not be able to do part of the transaction. Now, SBI has done a beautiful job with the Yono which they have created, and Mr. Bhasin is there on the call. I know he had a pivot role to play in drafting Yono as a solution. Today, a customer on SBI Yono seamlessly can move from internet banking to mobile banking to branch. Experience remains same, right? They are able to go ahead and seamlessly, complete transactions, multiple platforms. And not only that, they have done a phenomenal job in achieving a cross sell upsell. Look at the way SBI Life and SBI General Insurance and even the mutual fund, They have become the leading in the country. One of the reasons is Yono as a platform has really started giving them that additional edge which is there. So I think the whole digitization, the ecosystem part of it, the B2C part of it, moving from B2B is area where we are seeing more and more play happening as an IBM as an organization. So broadly, if I could call it three buckets: digitization in this change world which we are talking about, taking advantage of newer ecosystem is one area, and the second area is automation, where we are not talking about a bot and you investing technology and waiting for an outcome. Proactive, enterprise scale automation is what we are talking about. And third area which we are talking about is understanding the data. Having data is no good. Can you create customized produce? Can you offer me a customized point of view in terms of what we can do with it? So I think those are three areas, Meenakshi, where we are helping quite a few organizations locally as well as globally.
Thanks, Shell. No, I think that's definitely, I think helpful to know how we've been helping all the other Indian players as well. With that, we'll actually get into more of, the round two of the questions, which I'm just going to leave it open and, would request people to kind of share their inputs, etc. So one of the questions, since today's panel discussion was also anchored around mid-office and back-office optimization, etc. So wanted to just ask if any of you have thought about unlocking costs from the back office to fund your change initiatives. Have any of you already taken that decision, or is that something that you've considered or not considered? So, would really welcome your perspective. Anybody would like to, share it just now?
Let me try and understand this question a little better, Meenakshi. You said, have any one of you tried unlocking the value from back office operations? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, from automating your back office automation, going ahead, automating your back office to fund other change initiatives. Because, me in my previous role as well, that was the area I was in banking earlier, and you never really went ahead and invested as much as you needed to. But now that those investments are being made into your back office, and you're seeing the gains from it, those gains, has anybody thought about going ahead and plugging it into some of the other change initiatives that you've taken?
Yeah, I would say not for the purpose of not investing. Nobody's not invested. I think, to be clear, I think Shailendra kind of talked about it. The problem continues to be belling the cat from a legacy point of view, right? Clearly, people have tried to experiment this, and this is a huge problem with any core operation, that's there in any stuff. So I think people are trying to solve it not by putting in more money, but by trying to be a little more smarter in terms of making sure that they don't disrupt the apple cart. The question is not about throwing out what you already have and then bringing in brand new stuff and thinking that the money invested would be worthwhile. I don't think that's the question. I don't think no organization is actually worried about that investments, because all core applications are important. The question here is, one, availability of good quality solution. Two, how do you transit into a scenario without getting into any trouble in terms of business continuity, not getting into trouble. So that's, I think, is a core issue with most financial services organizations. So if I were to tell Mr. Bhasin, would you change your entire trading automation system? He would say, I really doubt it, because that takes years and years of work, and that's like a transition that somebody needs to do. So most of us have tried to kind of work around with it with patches. Honestly, there is really no solution. The new generation banks are actually trying to solve this a little differently, and that's where I've been reading about it. I think because you can start with a clean slate, there is an opportunity. Similarly, new fintechs have been trying to solve it in a different way. And I guess people like us have to reinvent, maybe build another brand, start operations there, and over a period of time, move this operation to that operation. I don't know, maybe. But the point I'm trying to say is, it's not money which is stopping us to think about building better efficiency. It's clearly the kind of solution available, and of course, real worry about how business disruptions can happen.
Sure. Definitely understand. Anybody else would like to add on to that?
From a banking perspective, Meenakshi, I mean, the only point that I would like to add is that, from a software side, as all of us would know, we're all pretty strong on the microservices, componentization of the entire services piece from a software stack, which is actually powering a lot of back office automation. See, we as a bank, for example, has a three-pronged strategy where we are investing significantly on the digital first mode, where everything happens in a self-service mode. But being a bank with a 90-year-old legacy, we also understand that there will be a lot of folks who would prefer to walk into the branches. And therefore, our second strategy is around nudging many of them to move to the digital space. And there, automation plays a big role, because one of the key things that we are finding in today's world, it's slightly ironical. A lot of people who are in the upper age group, etc., have seen their next generation actually do a lot of things on the digital space within a matter of minutes. And when they come to a physical space, they are actually expecting the physical service to be equally better, I mean, equally fast, if not better. So that means that you have to power the entire human workforce that is there with significant amount of automation at the back end. And that's only possible if you invest in, that's a third strategy that we have in transforming our back office with a lot of automation and modularization of the services. And there, when I'm talking about that, it's not just a software stack which actually breaks every service into components, etc., but it's also about the manpower at the back end which is required. For example, today RBI has got video KYC, which is a very strong tool now that we have got. I mean, with COVID coming in, uh, now the point is, while it started off as something which we were using as a captive tool for our own customers, today we are exposing it to a lot of players, a lot of fintech players who would like to partner with us. But at the same time, because KYC is something that has to be owned by the bank, we have to actually use that entire thing as a modular piece. And because video KYC demands technology plus people at the back end, live agents at the back end, screening and scrutinize, completely having a scrutiny on whether the person is indeed the person that we are talking to. So all of those services would also have to be broken up into significant components depending upon the scale of the channel which is using it. So that's a change that is happening, and that's actually unlocking a lot of value for the mid office and the front office.
Sure. No, that's.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Please go ahead.
Meenakshi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear. Yeah.
So I think all of you are talking about the back office. One of the thought process which I would share with you, and this is again in last about 6 months time frame across one asset management company and you know three banks, we did some assessment in their back office and the middle office. Okay. Uh, and you will be surprised. You would be really surprised with the data which we were able to get out. Leading banks, even in the contact center part of it, uh, thanks to COVID, almost 83% of the call still lands with the agent, right? And thankfully, the only recourse which they were having is every time, the volumes was increasing on the channels, they were going back to saying, how do I ramp up my contact center people? So if you look at the self-service percentages, which in a global scale, most organizations today are able to talk about the self-service of anywhere between in excess of 30%. The self-service percentages was very, very low. And one of the reason is that in back office in India, if you look at people, unlike the Western world, has not focused a lot, and that's completely my personal perspective, is because our cost of the resource here is so low. You spend 5 lakh rupees, 6 lakh rupees, and you all end up getting a resource in the country. Whereas in the Western world, it's a huge the problem which we have. When similarly, if you look at from a chatbot perspective, and the adoption of self-service even in their internal IT help desk, the percentages are very, very low. And that's where we believe that when we talk about a KYC, and I know Mr. So he was talking about the KYC, even for the simple things like reconciliation, KYC, and all, there are enough and more tools and technologies which has been adopted, where if not completely, part of it could be automated. But globally, if you look at in the industry which all of us represent, we have traditionally followed saying, okay, add more people to it. So whenever the right time presents, we will definitely talk about it. But this assessment which we have done it in last 6 months or so, some very interesting nuggets in terms of what is the art of possible without disrupting your business or without disrupting the core systems which you have. Because beyond the time, you can't do much about a core system. Let's be honest. It's like bank trying to do with their core system. you know, you stay with it for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. But outside the core system, if you look at the simple things like, the KYC processes, or if simple things like reconciliations, and other assets which is there, even your internal IT help desk. We have seen organizations who have 400, 500 people handling L0 and L1 sort of a ticket. Sorry, I'm getting a little techy. So I think those are the art of possible today. With automation, there are enough tools which is available in the market which has matured, where you can increase the self-services percentages and are able to get a bit of a straight through processing, if I could call it. You will never get nirvana, 100% is never possible, but there is definitely an opportunity from shifting the needle from where we are right now.
Shailendra, if I can add here, I mean,
Adit.
you have touched upon the automation part from the backside and the importance of the automation of call center and other things. But I have got a different experience. In SBI General, we have got lots many digital solution when it comes to the customer service or serving the customer, existing or the new. But we have observed one thing is still whatever you go for digitization, you go for automation, but SBI General actually always look for physical, as a concept where it's a perfect blend of digital and the physical assets. And I tell you, recently we have launched Healthline. Why? It is a 24 by 7 helpline for health policy holders, because whatever automation or digitization we do, still people make a call. They want some kind of assurance from a person to ensure that yes, your claim will be entertained. There are TPAs, there are attached hospital, people are attending to them. Still, they will make a call to general insurance or the
True.
company just to have some kind of assurance. Yes, they are at the right place with the right hospital and their claims will be entertained. So we cannot discount the importance of the human resources at the back office. So
True.
that is also one of my
Absolutely agree. See,
yeah.
financial services, the advantage or the disadvantage which you have is it's a trust-based relationship. If I'm parting with my money or I'm giving,
So I just have one point to add.
sorry, you're saying, go on, please.
I was just adding one important point. I think from my experience of having implemented delivery into multiple tech counterparts that I speak to and customers that I engage with, there are two categories that are coming. And I think organizations have to understand that many of us don't understand. And that is, there is one set of very rudimentary yes no type of an answer or transaction that is best suited for all your automation, bot, and everything. There is one set of good number of such transactions or requests which is subjective, which is yes, no, but, or yes, no, if. And that is where customers expect to have a conversation with a human person. You know what's the biggest feedback on a bot globally? The biggest feedback at the end of the bot when you ask for a customer feedback is, the next time I want to speak to a human. That's the biggest feedback on a bot. So one has to be very, very careful as to what you are pushing on bot. It's not a cost game. It is end of the day, it's a customer engagement, customer retention, and customer stickiness. And if you are able to identify very rudimentary things like, for example, what is your next premium due date? When is my policy maturing? Those are pure yes and no. Great, move them to a bot or to a fully automated IVR based call center. But there are good number of such interaction where it is appreciated by the customer that he has an option to speak to the executive. And that's what I just wanted to. Many of the companies or some of the companies blindly try to approach this problem as a cost or efficiency or speed. But we have to understand that customer necessarily does not understand the same language or give priority to speed and efficiency, whereas he may give far more weightage to a conversation. I
No,
think that is
absolutely.
why you would have seen recently in the last 2 years, there are increasing number of organizations that customer says, I want to, they select the option called speaking to a customer service executive, and they even pop up saying that you'll have to pay per minute charges, and customer says okay, and that's a demand. And I think if we are able to blend it, we would be able to get the best of both the worlds. That's my slightly different take that I had.
I would just add a point here, agreeing with everything. My point is there are different type of customers. There are people when I am impatient for a quick service, I would want to talk to a person, try to resolve it, and so on. Uh, but there are millennials who, for example, want more self-service, want to do things their way, their time, and so on. So the question is, according to me, not about can you move completely from, let's say, a call center which is assisted by human beings to a completely automated IVR and voice solutions to a. So the question is not about that. The question is finding the right balance and
Yes.
using the technology to support that balance. So for example, if I want to understand the fund value of a mutual fund, I probably don't need to talk to a person most of the time, unless I'm maybe redeeming my mutual fund, but not for the tracking purpose. In the same way, I think the point is to find that right balance between an automated, be it an IVR or a voice solution or a WhatsApp bot solution, and there are voice bots now in the market. Uh, when we are able to do that, that's when we are telling customers, you know what, you can come to me through an IVR, you can come call me directly. To say a premium customer, I may give them a dedicated desk with a dedicated relationship manager with a phone number that they can always reach out to, as opposed to go to a 1-800 number and so on. All of these are something that we will have to think in terms of a bouquet of services available to the customer. And that's how at least I like to think.
No, so Bala, you're right. I think when we also as an organization, we never look at going forward for that matter, any technology interventions, beyond the time as a cost play. It has to be in something from a customer experience perspective. There are customers who would be, wanting to talk, and believe me, in the Western world, the amount of automation and IVR they have done it, that they keep swinging you from one IVR pole to another, and beyond 20 minutes time, you get frustrated saying, "What the hell? I wanted to speak to somebody. I don't have a 20 minutes time to keep doing this thing." I think what we are only saying is that when we talk about any technology invention, whether it's on a digital or the automation side of it, till the time we are able to keep the customer experience in mind, right? I think it serves the purpose. But we believe that as an organization, there is still, efficiencies which is available, is still straight through processing, again from a customer experience perspective. Today, yesterday I was trying to do a transaction with one of the insurance company, and I won't name them, due respect to them. This made me first go through three transactions, and I completed the transaction. At the end of the transaction, somewhere I was hoping that I'll be able to, just get my services enabled. And it was a service request, by the way. Damn it. They expected me to, download the document, fill it, and send it to the branch. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I think, what has happened is our belief always is that look at the customer experience part of it. Where at the end of the day, we are doing everything for them. So even for the back office, when we talk about automation, we are saying not for efficiency. In India, you can't get much of efficiency gain out of it. What you can gain is how can you improve the customer experience. That's what we are trying to do it from a lot of our customer perspective. And actually, I'm just conscious of a time. I don't know how much time you have.
We have exactly 5 minutes, Shell, and actually, it's just really, my second question for you was actually going to cover up customer experience and what can we do from an IBM perspective. And I think you've covered up most of the points that we had wanted, but the question seemed to have just evolved in the dialogue that you all were having. So hence, I really didn't, interject and say, okay, I have one more question. But given we have 5 minutes left. I'm just going to throw one closing question and then wrap up with just some of the key points, and I'll probably follow it up with an email to everyone thanking you all. But it's a crystal ball. What would you like the industry to be like in the next 5 years? How do you see things being different in the next 5 years if you had a crystal ball? So, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I think, like every other business, we expect technology to drive better efficiency and hopefully better profit pools as part of it. And especially in industry like ours, we work on a very wafer thin margin. So, driving better efficiency, better customer experience will obviously help us, and of course, better decision making skills. So our main business is all about investment management capability, and today our capabilities are being questioned by bots and chats and algorithms and index funds and others. So we have a challenge of using technology to make that better. So obviously, that's one of the place we believe we will be able to outbeat some of these algorithm, world. But I think the larger part of it is that we would like to be a technology first organization, which clearly means that, all our processes, our efficiency, our touch points, interaction are as efficient as possible. Obviously, the end objective is to make some money in the whole process. So we expect to do well in terms of profit pools too. Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Jain. Anybody else would like to share their perspective?
My only submission would be that I think while we all have to be much agile and companies are agile on technology, we can't lose sight of technology with a human touch. I think the nature of uh, human being, and more so especially we Indians and Asians, we like to converse, we like to chat, we like to talk. Like one of the panelists mentioned, everything for us is physical and then also the digital. I think that's most important. And even in our organization, whatever we do, our focus is always to say that for every technology, there's also a human touch, uh, because there's two worlds out there, and and the customer will come from all these worlds.
Thank you.
I think if I can add, Nakshi, I think going forward, we need to invest more on digitization and automation. And I think profitability is something which has taken the backseat as of now. For next 5 years, I don't think that the companies are going to focus more on profitability. But yes, service with a human touch is again going to be the another area where company would be focusing in times to come.
Very well said, Mr. Lingwal. I think what's really coming across, what everybody's saying today, is that digital at core and human at the core is emerging as a key design principle to serve the customer needs. The customer needs to be at the heart of everything. I think that's really something that resonated through everyone today. I think the other piece that we picked up is that transformation's core essence is business continuity. The new generation banks are solving it differently. Clean slate gives you a whole new playground to define from scratch, as you don't have to burden of legacy. But that said, we really, really need to kind of redesign processes with the focus being on the customer and solving for the customer so that no critical touch point is lost. I think that's really something that I took away from today's discussion as well. I know we have 1 minute left. I just wanted to take the opportunity once again to thank you all for your time today. I think this conversation came up at a very key time. You all have weathered so many storms as leaders, and you're sharing these insights of what you all have gone through, which has been so unprecedented in the last 1.5 years. Has really been very useful for us to understand, what you're going through and what all should we also be doing as we plan for the future. So really, thank you so much for your time. Shell, anything that you'd like to add on?
No, really appreciate it. I think thank you, for taking so much of time out of your busy schedule. Really appreciate it. These are the discussions which really helps us learn from each other, and that was the objective for this forum. So really appreciate it. If there is anything which is there, Meenakshi will be in touch with you. Just let us know. We'll share that with the forum in case of any thought process which comes up. But really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.